Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this webcast. We're happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. We're very excited to have you join us for today's webcast about collaboration without boundaries. Distributed and hybrid teams can stop shipping with GitLab. In this webcast, we will be covering a few hot topics, such as fault-tolerant architectures, resilient repo structures, collaboration over big files, huge repos, source code management, a lot. In fact, we're leaving out quite a few. We will do so first from a macro perspective. So what elements of the GitLab product serve version control and collaboration for big enterprises, and how teams in that sort of environment require some of the features of GitLab. And then my colleague Daniel will get onto the nuts and bolts with a live demo actually of how source code management, code review, design management, how collaboration at the team level over code and other assets happens. And that will be live, by the way. Before we get started, let me go through a few housekeeping items. First, feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation. You can ask in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will have dedicated time at the end of the webcast for a Q&A. But if any question pops up in your mind, just go ahead and throw it in the Q&A section. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can see a chat function to get in touch with the moderator for help. Please go anytime, ask Jenny in this case, who's monitoring and making this stream live possible. And well, lastly, this webcast will be recorded. So if you've missed anything, don't worry, you can always get back to the recording, because we will be delivering it to all registrants in a few days. We will be launching a few polls throughout the webcast, because basically we would like to know more about you. In fact, I'm going to launch right now the first one. The question is pretty simple. So, how many times a day do you confuse GitLab with GitHub? The answers can be different. Never. It's always GitLab. You could miss it once, you can miss it 5, or you can miss it even 50 times a day, or never get it right the first time. So go ahead, and if you want to fill in the poll. Daniel, before I introduce you, but please jump in. How many times do you actually ever confuse GitLab with GitHub?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now
on the spot.
No, it's quite all right. Now that I've been at GitLab for a couple of years, it rarely happens. But I must confess that before I joined GitLab, it did happen a couple of times. So I think it's quite normal. I think as time goes by and we kind of solidify our position in the market, it's going to happen less and less.
Yeah, true. I'll be honest, I confuse them most of the times. That's also because I just talk a lot, and both names are pretty similar. But the products are pretty different, as we'll see actually in a minute. So quite a few votes have come in. People, I'm so glad. I'm extremely glad with the responses. The vast majority of you never confuse it. So I'm actually an outlier. Shame on me. Let me share the results, by the way, with all of you. So after this fun question, fun for you, not fun for me, let's move on to the presentation. So the agenda is pretty straightforward. Welcoming and housekeeping, already done it. Version control and collaboration at the macro level. So again, for enterprises, what are they requiring? How are we serving them? And version control and collaboration at the micro level, at the team level, the nuts and bolts, the features per se, the collaboration features that Daniel will showcase. That's me. I should have done this before, but there you go. My name is Jordi. I work for the strategic marketing team here at GitLab. I'm joining you lot from London, the UK. And we would love to hear where everyone's joining from. So please go ahead in the chat and share where you're coming from, where you're joining from. We'd love to hear from you and connect further on. My colleague, the one and only Daniel Gresso. Daniel is the product manager for the Create stage. I'll explain what that is. He's a product manager in the Create stage, and he's the product manager of the source code group and the code review group, which look at both groups after source code management features and code review features. He's joining us today from Atlanta, Georgia, and the US, obviously. And well, you've already popped up, Daniel, but would you like to say hi?
Yes, hi, everyone. Glad to be here sharing with you this great webinar today.
Lovely. So before I jump into the enterprise requirements and the version control and collaboration requirements at the macro level, let me give you a quick primer on what GitLab is in case anyone is not familiar. I'll skim through it because one of the main characteristics of GitLab, it's its breadth. It is in fact so broad that it's a tool that covers all the software development lifecycle. It is a complete DevOps platform, as we see it, delivered in one single application. Let me get that through because it's sometimes a bit of a breakthrough given the current state of the tool chain that the average programmer, the average developer, the average operations person uses. In GitLab, for example, you can design the architecture of your application in a mermaid diagram, and from there, in the same interface, you can deploy that same application that you designed in a declarative environment such as, I don't know, Kubernetes or anything. In the same environment, you can do that. And all the things between. I'm thinking of, I don't know, clustering your user requests or client requests or product requests in epics and issues. Creating the repos to host the code and the infrastructure to version it. Making everything compliant with code hygiene and code quality rules. Everything, all those that protect branches, set up push rules, all of that can happen in one single application, which is GitLab. At any point in time, GitLab allows you to aggregate such data, because obviously many activities happen in the same application, and gain bird's eye view to improve team metrics, lifecycle analytics, code quality analytics, merge analytics. So you can actually focus on different areas of the software development lifecycle and understand what's happening there. On screen, you can see the stages that I briefly mentioned before. So Daniel works in, the stages is how we internally assess the software development lifecycle, right? They're relevant mostly for the product team. I'm not going to poll you on this, by the way. It's not an exam question, but some of them are mostly self-explanatory. For example, the stage in which Daniel works, the create stage, covers the features in GitLab that serve the people that create code and software, right? So that it's sort of self-explanatory. For the purpose of this talk anyway, we will highlight only the capabilities that GitLab allows or releases that allow for version control and collaboration to build better software. So no need to memorize what is on the screen. And these are other types of benefits that we will not cover in this webcast that come with the use of GitLab. But it's worth mentioning and bringing them up. Another thing worth mentioning about GitLab, the company, in this case, not the product, is that we are fully remote, okay? And we work in the open. We publish publicly how we operate in a handbook that you can find in about.gitlab.com/handbook. And we work transparently. There are other tools in specific processes such as, I don't know, Salesforce for sales and so on. But most of the activities of the company, and most importantly, the development of the product, the roadmap, and the customer and community support are done through GitLab. So the company is run through GitLab, and we're absolutely transparent about it. This chart that you're seeing shows the categories and features by level of maturity and the features that are in the roadmap. In fact, this screenshot is from the first weeks of this year. So being GitLab, a product that is designed for fast delivery, by this time I took the screenshot today of the same website, again, hosted in the handbook, is a I think the comparison between the two screenshots is a testament that we as a company move blazing fast. I'm sure that Daniel will agree with me that working at GitLab demands the best of oneself to stay focused because everything moves extremely fast. The good thing is that our day-to-day work happens in GitLab, which is, as I said, thought for and designed for such speed. Another testament to this incredible speed is the amount of features that from the foundation of the company up to this year, we incrementally release. Please bear in mind that the last column is not reflecting all the categories and features that we're releasing this year because it wouldn't have fit. And well, you need to update it constantly otherwise. There's another curve, by the way, I'm interested in highlighting, and this is the last thing I'll say about GitLab, the product. And it is a weird curve that not many people are aware of, but this is a study from Norman Neiman Group, the firm specialized in UX, and it basically reflects the concept of learnability and memorability. So again, GitLab is one single tool for all the software development lifecycle. If you think of the typical tool chain that manages your current, if you're not a GitLab client, software development lifecycle, it will be composed of many tools. And each one of those, going back to the curve just shown, will require certain process for you to familiarize yourself with the interactions, with the icons, with the copy, with the general flow of each one of those interfaces. Every time you jump from one to another, the chances are that the learnability of each one of those platforms will push you back to that part of the curve on the left that requires you to do more actions to become familiar and memorize and internalize the interface you're using. In the case of GitLab, being one single application, that definitely happens once, and then once you're familiar with it, regardless of what stage of the software development lifecycle, you're familiar with the GUI itself. So let's jump onto what version control at the enterprise, at the macro level, is requiring. What are the problems that this segment of the market actually is requiring? There are plenty. We will focus only on two. Basically, the fact that at the enterprise level, at the global level, constant change is happening. So it's very difficult to keep up with changes on different locations, different changes in different teams. That makes the code base really, really dynamic, and the onboarding process of new hires can be a pain, a complete pain. Managing the versions of these conflicts and these products can become, again, a difficult task to do, which eventually will become broken builds or unable to release, and you get stuck. And the same happens with communications, right? It is difficult to, in an ever-changing environment, communicate all the changes effectively, provide the context enough for that information transfer to happen. And this could lead into a culture of finger pointing and blaming and so on, and eventually frustrated teams and so on. So the consequences, the clear consequences of this, and at the group level, at the team level, is that you eventually end up releasing poor quality code because you either release anything or it takes a lot of time for you to release, or unexpected vulnerabilities come up and bug fixes and so on. You can slow your velocity, the team, and you miss market opportunities because you're not fast enough. Again, the developer experience can be rough for the reasons we just went through, and the business disruption of the software that you're delivering is minimal. So the end goal of version control and collaboration solution of GitLab is to connect all the pieces of the software creation efforts, no matter where the teams are and no matter what your team's visibility is of the project, right? What the version control and collaboration use case of GitLab allows you to is to have almost full visibility of everything across the software development lifecycle and across the project. So there are two features in that assess specifically the broker communication problem that is basically GitLab Geo, one of them. GitLab Geo replicates and verifies data between a primary and multiple secondary GitLab instances. There are certain reasons why having a setup like this is relevant, but basically it's an improved user experience for distributed teams. Again, I'm thinking of companies that are globally distributed or with remote teams that have been outsourced and so on. And it's also a secure setup for failover. So some of the nodes can be dedicated exclusively for a failover or disaster recovery case. And so therefore the uptime, or actually the downtime, is minimal, because in case of catastrophic incident, you can always fail over to that, to different nodes. So the ability to connect those will allow you to have a setup that is distributed geographically and a setup that keeps all the uptime as maximum as possible. We have clients with several nodes just replicating read privileges and only some nodes that have write privileges. So it is for them to decide upon how the nodes are hot or not, the privileges that each one of those have, and so on. Eventually, setting up a GitLab Geo strategy will allow you to have visibility, since all the nodes, most of them, are pretty well synchronized and up to date. And therefore, the teams in Bangalore, the teams in London, the teams in Seattle will be working on the same version. It will give you, therefore, velocity, because you're working on the last version of anything, especially if you have write privileges in the node you're working on, and obviously effective collaboration at the team level, at the node level. I'll be finishing now with that. Add another thing that assesses the constant change problem that we just saw before are features such as GitLab clusters, GitLab clusters, excuse me, sparse checkout, and partial clone. So GitLab clusters, it's pretty similar, by the way, to Geo, is what makes GitLab highly available and fault tolerant. It basically enables scalable, redundant repo storage without the need for NFS. GitLab, for those of you unfamiliar with it, is the GitLab component that is responsible for the storage of Git repositories. It is an RPC service for handling all the Git calls made by GitLab. So potentially with something like this activated, you can get repos that are huge and full of large files that are replicated across different nodes. And the capabilities of both GitLab Geo and GitLab clusters become extremely useful. But at the group level or at the team level, you won't need for such to clone or to have an entire copy of what's hosted in the remote repos that are, again, huge, highly available, part of hot nodes. So for that reason, we're delivering, and these features that I just mentioned are pretty new, by the way. So we will encourage you to use them and provide us feedback. Again, we're an open company. The issues in which we are working on these features are open there for you in the appropriate project for you to give us feedback on them. There are 3 features that I'll mention and finish with them to work with partial copies of huge repos. And those are partial clone, sparse checkout, and file locking. So partial clone allows anyone actually working with huge files in big repos to work locally with the file selected on a just-in-time basis, right? So instead of having a complete synced clone on from the repo, hosting all the I don't know, design files or any other binary that's huge, partial clone will allow designers, for example, to select specific files that they want to work only, right? In the case of sparse checkout, this will allow anyone working in such case to probably check out files from repos containing, again, huge files. And with the sparse checkout, you can limit the download and the checkout of those files to the file level or to the path or the directory level. And eventually, in this type of setup in which you've got distributed teams working on multiple files, you will benefit greatly from the file locking feature. So file locking allows anyone to make files read-only, and simply by applying this attribute to any of the files you want to work with, for example, the file will be locked for everyone except you. This locking attribute will propagate to any of the branches where the file is locked. So with this setup that I mentioned, with the architectures that I went over very briefly right now, companies with a global distributed workforce of developers, but not only developers, designers and anyone working with binaries or huge files are able to set up nodes that allow their teams to become always productive, always in sync, and with full visibility across the project. That is the macro level explanation of the version control and collaboration use case of GitLab. And before I jump into Daniel's hands-on nuts and bolts demo of how that works at the group level, at the team level, let me throw out the second of our polls. The second one is about, I want to get a better visibility from you about feature branches. We can discuss maybe later if feature branches should be called task branches, for example, for that matter, or no. But how long, on average, does your feature branch last? Is it just hours? Is it a few days? Never a week, just a couple of days, 3 days, a week, or whatever it takes. Maybe you're not showing. I'm not showing the poll right now, but the answer has been cut, and I had made a terrible joke that I won't reproduce. Daniel, what about you? Before I jump onto you, how long do you? Let me ask you two questions. Do you actually work with feature branches at the source code management and code review groups?
Yep, that's right. We generally use feature branches, and we even go a step further than that. If we can kind of bisect them front end and back end, we'll do that one step further. But yes, we use feature branches. And
do you have a definition in terms of time for a feature branch? Are they limited in time?
Well, we don't have a hard time limit, but we do try to make our changes as small as possible. So if we can further break down something, we will before we create that branch. And it generally lives in the order of 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay. So then that's why I said at the beginning of the poll that I think it's worthwhile defining a subset of feature branches called task branches that should be defined as something that lasts hours, maybe 1 day, and then feature branches for something longer. But anyway, that's a debate that we can have actually in the Q&A. So let me finish the poll and share the results. Okay, so, okay, I see that most of you agree with, most of you agree with Daniel, whatever it takes, more than a week, most probably. Although there are a few of you that have said that just a few days, never a week. Maybe, again, the definition of task branch versus feature branch for something longer is worthwhile. Oh, okay. Let me show. Okay, Daniel, well then on to you. Your turn to discuss, well, actually to show, case and demo source code management.
Excellent. Thank you, Jordi. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to share my GitLab screen here, and I am going to provide you with a short demo today that it's meant to showcase some of the capabilities that GitLab offers in both the source code management and also the code review fields. And basically, it's meant to show you how advantageous it is to have a single application for your software development lifecycle. So here I am in the main GitLab screen. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new project. So let's go ahead and do that. I am going to create a project based on a template. And this is just meant to save me some time. GitLab provides a number of great templates that come pre-populated with all the files that you need to get started with your application. So let's use something light and fast. Let's use Node.js, for example. And here we're going to give our project a name. So let's say this is our webinar demo project. And here we'll give it a description. I'm just going to say this is the version control and collaboration webcast, and I'll make it public. And I'll just go ahead and click on create project. So what GitLab will do now is we'll import all of the files that are on that template and bring them to my repo. This should take only a couple of seconds, after which I see the project overview. Okay, so I see that the process is done. I see a couple of things here on the project overview screen. I will see, of course, the name and the ID of my project, the number of commits and branches, and I will also see how much room my files are taking, as well as how much storage the overall project takes. And that may be, due to history and due to merge requests and things of that nature. So great. I am here in my project and we're ready to show you the first feature for source code management. And that is a feature that we call code owners. So when contributing to a project, it can often be difficult to find out, number one, who should review my changes? Which person or group should be the one that reviews what I have submitted? And number two, if you have a question, let's say about a specific file or code block, it may be difficult to find out who to find an answer from. So code owners is meant to solve both of those problems. Using code owners is very simple. All we need to do is add a file named code owners to the root of our repo. And you can use code owners in a couple of ways. So you can use code owners to address specific files, followed by who the code owner should be for that file. So here I'm going to add a code owner line for a file, and that is the index.js file under the routes folder. I'm going to make myself the code owner for that file. And actually there's an index in the views folder as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and make myself the code owner for that. Let's say that we also have a test folder, as we do in this project. And I want everyone from the test team to be the code owners for any file under that path. So I'm just going to select that path and I'm going to select the testers group here in my project. And then anyone from the testers group is going to be able to either own or approve any changes made to that folder. And then I am going to go ahead and commit my changes. You can personalize your commit message for your Git server. So I'm going to say add code owners file, and I'm going to target my master branch. So that's great. If you navigate to the file that you have specified in your code owners file, you should now see a tooltip that indicates who the code owner or either the user or the group is. And you see here right below the last action. And that's great. As I said, that will let me know who has to approve changes or who can I reach out for help in case I have any questions around that part of the code. So that's it for code owners. Let's move on to the next feature that I want to show you, and that is branch protection. So this is a feature that we call protected branches. And permissions in GitLab are fundamentally defined around the idea of having read or write permissions to either your repo or the branches. So you can impose further restrictions on certain branches. And what this is meant to do is basically meant to allow you to enforce workflows if you wish. So let's say in this particular example, let's take a look at a workflow that I want to enforce that says two things. The first one is none of the developers should be committing directly to the master branch. So I want all of my changes to come through a merge request. And that allows me a couple of things. The first one is if I want to add rules to merge requests around who can approve, I can enforce that workflow. And the second is for security, right? So if I want to make sure that the code that is deployed to production is safe and has high quality. So I can do that with the protected branches feature in GitLab. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select which branch I want to protect. As I said, you can do this with a single or multiple branches. I'm going to say who is allowed to merge here. So we have many roles in GitLab, and the maintainer role is basically that role that is meant to review and maintain the quality of the code. So I'm going to say maintainers or above can merge. So a developer then would have to seek out one of their peers that has a role of a maintainer, and they can merge that. And who's allowed to push directly to the master branch? I'm going to say no one. I don't want anyone to push directly to master because I want to enforce a merge request workflow. And then the last bit here, this toggle allows me to specify if I require approval from code owners. And this is very powerful. As I said, I've identified who the experts are on certain parts of the code, and I want to make sure that they review any of the changes that go there. And that's it. I'm going to click protect. And now all of those protections are in place, as you can see here, for the branch that I have specified. So that's really great. And now let's move on to the next feature. GitLab makes it easy to add compute space to your project. In the past, this would generally take the form of either requesting ops to create a VM for you or give you some computing space, or creating it in your own data center. With GitLab, we're going to make it easy. And we have a built-in Kubernetes integration that allows you to add a Kubernetes cluster directly on popular providers like Amazon or Google, or you can add an existing cluster. Let's say if you have infrastructure in your data center that allows you to create them. So for this example, we're going to create it on Google's GKE. The creation process is quite simple. We have an OAuth mechanism here with Google, after which you select your account. You simply have to specify the cluster details. So here, I'm going to call this my demo cluster. You can scope it to a specific environment. Let's say if you only want to use this cluster for your production environment, you can do so by scoping it here. And then I am going to select the project in my Google Cloud platform, the zone, the number of nodes. Let's say I just want to use one node because this is a small app, and the machine type. And then I'm going to click on Create Kubernetes Cluster. That whole process takes about 1 to 3 minutes. So instead of sitting through that creation process, let's just pull up a project that is exactly the same where I've already created that cluster. And I'll show you kind of the management that you can do with Kubernetes here is really powerful and very easy. So I have the detailed tab here that shows me the environment that I've scoped to. I can click on the Health tab, and it'll show me the performance data for my clusters, such as CPU and memory usage. I have the Applications tab, which through a single click allows me to install applications in my cluster. So for example, in this example, you see that I've installed Ingress, which is an application that allows me to route the requests based on a number of conditions. Cert Manager, which allows me to issue SSL certificates for my applications, and Prometheus, which allows me to monitor my applications. And that one is very tightly coupled with GitLab. All right, so that's about it for adding a cluster, as you can see very easily. And now I have space where developers can deploy their tests to. Let's say they create a branch and they want to preview their changes in a computing environment, they can do it right here. So very cool and powerful. Let's move on to the next thing that I want to show is how we can create an issue and move from an issue to a merge request. So there are no open issues in my project. Let's go ahead and create a new one. It's quite simple. We just click on Create New Issue. And here, I'm going to give it a title. Let's say for this specific one, I want to create a customized home screen for my Node app. Since it's kind of very generic, I want to customize it a bit. And on the description, I'm just going to say what I want to do. I'd like for us to customize the Node template to something more user-friendly. And I'm going to attach a mockup. So I'm going to see attached mockup for ideas, and then submit it. So I want to talk about the next feature that I'm going to show you, and that is design management. So design management in GitLab allows you to upload design assets. So if you're thinking about wireframes, mockups, things that can direct the work and give more specificity. You can attach them directly to GitLab issues and keep them stored in a single place. So accessed by the design management page within an issue, It's a great way to give product designers, product managers, developers, give them a way to collaborate on designs in a single source of truth. So you don't have all of the things scattered all over the place. And this is quite easy. Here you can see that I can upload a design. So I'm going to upload a wireframe that I have created. And it's as simple as that. So let's say as a product manager, I have created this issue with the requirements. And now as a design person, as a designer, I can come in and look at the mockup that the product manager has created. And I can, let's say, comment on specific parts of the design. So if you see my cursor, I'm going to place it right next to the heading that says hello. And here I am going to insert a comment saying, perhaps we should not use all caps for the title. And then that's it as a product designer. And then as a product manager, I can have a conversation with that person. And this is great for remote teams as we are here in GitLab, because it allows us to communicate in an async manner. So by the way, comments here fully support Markdown. So I'm going to say that we should, I'm going to bold should capitalize. We want it to stand out. And I'm going to comment here, and you see that that Markdown has been applied. Great, we had that conversation here, and you can have as many conversations and as many designs in GitLab issues. So this is a great way to keep that conversation going. All right, so we've already created that issue. We've already had discussions on it. So now I'm going to put my developer hat on, and I'm going to go over to my Kanban board. So I am going to pick up the next thing on the backlog, and I see that this is create a customized home screen, and I'm going to move it to from the open column to the doing column. And when I do that, I'll go back to the issue and show you that GitLab has automatically applied the labels that I have set up on my Kanban board. So what I showed you was a very simple and straightforward Kanban board, but you can add as little or as much statuses as you want. So it's very flexible and very powerful. Okay, so as a developer, I am now here on this issue. I kind of see that we want to customize the home screen. I have a mockup, which is great. That gives me all the details that I need to get started. GitLab makes it real easy for developers to get started, either via command line or through the GUI. So here you see that I have this create merge request button available to me as a developer. And it does a couple of things. So it can create the merge request and the branch automatically for me. Or if I only want to create a branch because I'm not ready to do a merge request yet, I can also do that. But let's say I want to create a merge request in a branch. It will automatically suggest the branch name for me with the issue ID concatenated with the issue title. All right, so great, that looks good. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to click on create merge request. So one of the things that you'll notice on GitLab merge request, and we're kind of shifting gears now to the code review features of GitLab, is that the merge request was automatically created in draft mode. So draft mode is kind of a clear signal that tells people this is not ready to be reviewed yet. It's still a work in progress, and I'm still working on it. When I'm ready, I can remove that draft status. But basically, GitLab will not allow you to merge anything that is on draft mode. You have to explicitly mark it as ready. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing here. As a developer, I can do a couple of things here. I can either open my code editor, such as Sublime, VS Code, whatever I may use, or I have an option right here in GitLab to open in the web IDE. And this is a great feature that GitLab offers, and it's a fully fledged integrated development environment available right in the browser. So you see on the left, I have the file tree, and on the right, I have the preview. And I can make all the changes that I need here. So I saw the mockup, and I know that I want to change the title first. So I'm going to go ahead and do the routes and index.js, and I'm going to change this to hello for the first heading. And then the second one was on the view that says, leave us welcome to the webinar. So here I have welcome to variable. I'm just going to change that to say welcome to the webinar. All right, I think that I'm good with those changes. Here I see on the bottom left the number of files that I have changed and the ability to commit. So I have a pre-populated commit message that I can use, or I can simply override it and say updated welcome screen as per requirements. Great, I'm gonna go ahead and commit that. And I see that all my changes have been committed, and it's as simple as that. Let's go back then to the main project. And now let's talk a bit more about the code review features of GitLab. So now I have my merge request, and as a developer, I see a couple of things here when I visit it now that I have made changes. I see the number of commits, I see the number of pipelines that have been created for that merge request, and the number of changes. So one commit, the one commit that I did encompassed 2 different changes to 2 different files that I can view on this screen. I can see I changed the index.js and the index.pug files. Okay, great. So as a developer, I'm satisfied now with my merge request. And now I'm going to mark it as ready. As you see here, GitLab is telling me that this merge request is still a work in progress and that draft merge request cannot be merged. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark it ready. Okay, so now as a developer, I'm ready to hand off my work to the reviewer. So from this list, I'm going to assign it to whoever I want to review it. And then they in turn will receive a notification that will let them know that my work is ready to be looked at. So now with the reviewer hat on, I'm going to go ahead to the changes screen that shows me the diff between the branch that exists and the incoming branch that the developer wants to merge. So there are a couple of things that I can do as a reviewer here, but most of the things that I do take the form of a conversation. So I noticed that this developer is using a certain router that will be deprecated in a future version of this app. So I want to insert a non-stopping comment that says, this router is deprecated. We should change in a future version. So I'm kind of letting them know we don't need to do it now, but keep this in mind for the future. So now when I insert a comment, I have a couple of options. I can add the comment now, which will generate a notification to the author, or I can add it to my review. And basically what that will do is batch all of the comments that I have and send them as a single action. And that way I can minimize the noise that I'm sending back to the developer. So great, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. The second thing that I wanna let them know is I see that they used all caps here. So I'm going to insert a suggestion and I'm going to say, use this in normal case. And the great thing with the suggestion is that the author can apply it with a single click, or they can ignore it as well if they want to. So I'm going to add that to my review, that as a suggestion. And let's say the last thing that I want to do is tell them that this last change looks good to me. Nice work. And I'm going to add it to the review. All right, so I have 3 changes. I can see at the bottom of my screen here, I have the ability to finish the review. And I have 3 things that were added to my review. Great, I think that looks good. It shows me the files and the specific line. So I'm going to just go ahead and submit the review. All right, so as a reviewer, I am done. I am now ready to move on as a developer to review the changes that were submitted by the reviewer. So there are a couple of things that I can do as a developer here, which are quite cool. I basically configured GitLab CI to deploy this to a review environment using my Kubernetes cluster. And I see that the merge request shows me the possibility to view the app. So if I click here, I can see my app being served live from my Kubernetes cluster, and it'll give me the changes that were made on my branch and that are being proposed on the merge request. So that's great. And now I see that there are a couple of comments that were left by the reviewer. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. The first one is that the reviewer is telling me this router is now deprecated. We should change it in a future version. So great, I don't want to lose sight of that. GitLab gives me this great option to resolve this thread in a new issue. So if I go ahead and click on that, GitLab will automatically create an issue and pre-populate all the fields with the data that's coming from that merge request. So it'll give me a title, follow up from, create a customized home screen. And the description is, the following discussion should be addressed. This error is deprecated. We should change it in a future version. Great. I'll submit that issue. GitLab pre-populated all the fields for me and made it easy. After I created this issue, I'm going to go back to my board and placed it on the to-do section of my board. That's it. I'm done with that first comment. And taking that action will automatically resolve that thread. So when I open that issue, that thread is considered solved because I'm going to follow up. The second change that I see here is that the reviewer suggested that I put this in lowercase. Perhaps they didn't look at the issue and they didn't view that the requirements had it in uppercase. So I'm just going to tell them this is done as per requirements. Thanks for the suggestion. I don't want to sound too passive aggressive. All right, resolve thread and add comment down. All right, so that one's done. And then the last one is looks good to me. Nice work. I'm going to say thank you. So nothing really for me to do there. So I'm just going to say thank you and resolve the thread. And that basically addresses all of the feedback that the reviewer had. So now I'm going to ping it back to the reviewer and it's basically ready to be merged. The reviewer, as I said, they can view live app with my changes, or they can simply choose to merge. Now that all the things have been taken care of, this button is enabled and those changes can go ahead and be merged back to the master branch, which in turn does a couple of things. It will create a new pipeline for the master branch. And because of all the configuration I had on my branch, this change could have only gone through a merge request and it could only be reviewed by a certain person that's an expert on that part of the code. So that's how powerful GitLab is. In a very short time, you can create workflows that are very powerful and can be as little detail as you want, or as much specificity for your workflows as you need. So I really hope that you enjoyed the demo. And Jordi, back to you.
So yeah, I mean, I was thinking right now. So thanks, Daniel. That was excellent. That was perfect. So think about version control collaboration as a use case again. So GitLab is a huge product of which Daniel just showed you a bit. And in fact, he even through the demo, he went over the limits of version control collaboration by deploying an app, right? So that would be maybe part of the deployment stages and so on. But anyway, so think of GitLab as a sort of like Swiss knife. And this was an explanation of how to use it in version control and collaboration, but it can be used for many other things. Fortunately for Daniel and me, we've got plenty of questions. So let me go through them. Egil, Daniel, asks you if Code Owners is available for the Community Edition or only in the Enterprise Edition.
All right, so one thing to clarify there is that Enterprise is a distribution, it's not really an edition. So when we talk about Enterprise, we're probably talking about tiers. So we have Starter, and then we have Premium, and we have Ultimate. And those are kind of the paid tiers. So the Code Owners feature is available in the Starter tier, or what we call Bronze for self-managed customers.
Yeah. So Johannes asks, how about an integration through OpenShift? He asks this in relation to the creation of the Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah, so while you cannot automatically create the cluster through GitLab in OpenShift, you can manually create it in OpenShift and later manually add it to GitLab to that second screen that I showed there. Yeah, so that is possible.
Talking about integrations, actually, I think it's John Devereaux from Boston. No, I'll go back to you, John, in a minute. Johannes again, actually requests or asks if his favorite IDE can be integrated. He thinks about Eclipse and Visual Studio, but as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, we only have integration with Visual Code, and we actually provide an IDE as you showcased, right? So this is the line of thought in GitLab. Like if you want to do fast changes, you can do it immediately from the web interface by opening a web IDE that is growing in power day by day. But yes, some of your favorite IDEs can be integrated. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel.
That's exactly right. So basically, you can use the web IDE provided by GitLab, or you can use your favorite IDE. So Johannes, the ones that you mentioned, such as Visual Studio and Eclipse, they do have GitLab plugins that make it a lot easier to use. Some of those are community driven, like for Eclipse, and some of those are managed by GitLab, like the one for VS Code. But yes, the majority of the most popular ones out there do have an integration with GitLab.
Okay, John's question was really interesting. John from Boston. Does GitLab have a service where one can source code for malicious code? So he says, a service to ensure that all code was scanned before compiling and release. I can go if you want for this one. I mean, I know that we're pushing scanners and security features to the left, right? This is another use case of GitLab, right? With the ability, we call it DevSecOps, the ability to bring those features rather than at the end of the software development lifecycle, but rather to the creation part, to the developer thing. But you can do definitely scan for secrets before compiling and do some sort of static analysis of the code. Not for all the languages, but for some. And I know that we are increasingly bringing more and more support for that. Correct? Or am I wrong, Daniel? Does that ring a bell?
Yep, you are right on all counts there. So with GitLab, it's easy to do things built in. So we have two scanners that are offered as part of GitLab: static application security testing and dynamic application security testing. Because GitLab has CI built in, all of those you get automatically if you are part of the ultimate tier. And we are evaluating bringing both of those to the core tier, so basically the community edition of GitLab. And more so, if you're using GitLab CI, you can integrate it with whichever security tool or scanning tool you use today.
Okay. Burke, let me go to your question, Burke. What if you're not using GitLab for issue management? Are there any integrations with other tools that can link issues or any other system with code changes and merge requests in GitLab? I know, so ideally you would work with GitLab epics and issues, but I know for a fact that we can definitely integrate into, you can integrate your repos, your GitLab repos into, for example, the Atlassian product, which I just forgot the name of. Am I right, Daniel? Can you manage user requests, user stories, product definition, feature definition, all of that in other products that are not GitLab products?
Yeah, I suspect that John may be referring to Jira. And yes, we just launched as part of GitLab 13.12 a deep integration with Jira issue tracking, where if you turn it on, as part of GitLab, you will see Jira issues coming from your Jira instance. So yes, we have deep integration with Jira, and we then integrate in kind of a sync kind of integration with other tools. And what I mean by sync is that the synchronization will create an equivalent issue in GitLab coming from your issue tracking system. And as I said, for Jira, we don't need to do that because we'll show you those contents coming directly from Jira.
Thanks, Daniel. Okay, let's move on to the last two questions. Oh, we've got maybe a bit more time. So this is a recent change, Peter. Peter Dymowski asks, what is the difference between work in progress and draft when used as a prefix for merge requests in the title? You just went through it, Daniel. You just introduced this feature. I mean, not you, but your team. So go ahead.
Yes, all credit goes to the team for sure. So the short answer is that there is no difference. We recently relabeled WIP to draft. And most of the reason there is that WIP is really not a self-explanatory term unless you know that it stands for work in progress. And the second reason is that it's not quite easy for non-English speakers to know what WIP means without having to like Google it or do something like this. Whereas draft is easily translatable and more inclusive.
I have a big problem with acronyms in general. Although they are designed for economy of the language, I have terrible trouble memorizing them. Okay, let's go for Rob's Panebianco's question. Are there any links or materials to point me to for leveraging approval rules, the MR feature? Background, we're planning to use GitLab CI/CD to automate for DevOps automation that supports our Redshift data virtualization and ETL work. No problem with that, Rob. I'm happy to connect with you later and point you to the specific page of the documentation that explains approval rules. And in fact, for that matter, I have a blog post in line being published sometime in August, so in a few weeks, about approval rules, about code owners, about user roles, etc., etc. So that will come in handy for any one of you with questions about that, because like Daniel just showcased, but the combination of protected branches, code owners, push rules, I'm leaving out a few, but the ability to template all those and force your team members to comply with them becomes eventually like a streamline of the process of code hygiene and so on. That is eventually magic. Okay, let me get two last questions then. There's plenty of them. Thank you, by the way. Thanks, Rob. So Sergey Lysenko asks, can use Kate? I never know how to pronounce that, by the way, Daniel. Is it so?
Kubernetes.
Okay. Cluster on my laptop. Can I use a Kubernetes cluster in my laptop?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sergey. So yes, the short answer is that you can. There is there's this great lightweight tool called K3S, and it's lightweight Kubernetes, and we use that in conjunction with kind of a tunneling product that gives the ability for something that's running on local host to have an external addressable IP. And that's how we do most of the development here at GitLab, is with a local Kubernetes cluster running on your laptop. Yep.
Okay, I've got two questions that, since the scope of them is pretty broad, I'll go through them with your help, Daniel, and finish with this because we're almost over the top of the hour. So Geetha asks, what if the code changes are complex? How do you manage it? I mean, obviously, if the code review process, when you involve your teammates, requires a lot of changes. I think that the last features that Daniel showcased, insertion of suggestions, like bundling comments, etc., helps the bulk of it. But obviously, if the code changes are complex, then there's a manual work to do there. Then there's a lot of coordination that I think GitLab helps with at the merge request, because the interface is really clear, and the functionalities that I just mentioned and that Daniel just showcased help you with that. But eventually, if it's very complex, if the code is difficult to understand, if the changes are complex, it will eventually boil down to the human level, right? I'm not sure if Daniel, you want to add anything to that? But...
Yeah, so there are a couple of features that we offer to try to make this easy as possible. So let's say if you have a merge request with 25 files that are changing in 1,000 lines of code, you can scope it down. So when you're reviewing it, you can do it file by file, or you can view common changes commit by commit. So we have a couple of workflows that help you manage very large and complex merge requests.
Which, by the way, reminds me of something that we're going to release very soon. One way to avoid complex, big code changes when the code is already there is to scope them better, right? Which is not an easy thing to do, but if you can manage. So we are soon releasing at the issue level iterations. So it's going to be a feature that allows you to, when you're not aware of, or you're not able to measure very precisely the scope of what's contained in an issue, then just approach it like at GitLab we do. Let's MVC it. Let's do the minimum viable value change that we know we're going to add value to it. Let's consider that an iteration and then move to the next one and explore, like face it in an exploratory manner, fashion, right? So stay alert for the iterations feature that is coming soon. Not sure if tomorrow, in the release of tomorrow, if not, the next month. And the last question from Lynn Starr. What, it's not a question, I mean, it's a question, but it's more a comment, I would guess. Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, but why wouldn't I have an option to attach my design to an issue? Well, actually, that's what Daniel showcased. At the issue level, GitLab is right now, as far as I know, the only source code management tool, the only version control and collaboration tool, you name it, that allows you to upload designs, request comment on them. So feedback, is this what you are asking for? Is this meeting expectations? Request feedback at the pixel level, as Daniel showed with goblets and so on. And yeah, that's actually what it is for. I mean, to involve designers in the DevOps process, if you wish, in the fast delivery process at the issue level will prevent errors and mistakes that involving them later will probably create. So and well, that's one of the things, by the way, on this same topic, we're soon releasing it's actually live already, sorry, a Figma plugin. So if you're a Figma user and you create your storyboards there, your mood boards there, you're the hardcore part of your designs there, just like you do, for example, in a local IDE, like Johannes mentioned before, you can upload seamlessly with the GitLab plugin your designs to the issues and get going from there and release as fast as Daniel just showcased in the demo. That's all. Thank you all for participating. Anyone with more questions, feel free to ask us. The recording will be available, so you can go into the weeds of what Daniel explained. It was a lot to unpack. We even didn't get to, I don't know, 10% of what the product is capable of doing, and yet there's a lot of value there. Okay, so nothing else from my side. Daniel, would you like to say goodbye?
Yes, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon.
Take care all. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.